Bună ziua, bine ați venit la Festivalul Egalității de Gen. Avem astăzi o dezbatere despre cum susținem egalitatea de gen în Europa de Est. Dezbaterea va avea loc în limba engleză, dar vom reveni cu o postare a materialului și cu traducere în limba română. Hello, dear guests. We are very happy to welcome you to the Gender Equality Festival, the 16th edition. We are discussing today about how we sustain and nurture gender equality in Eastern Europe with guests from Hungary. We have Borbala Juhac from Hungarian Women's Lobby. Also from Moldova, we have Nigina Azizov, program analyst at UN Women Moldova, working for a long time on the issue of ending violence against women and girls. And from Romania, Laura Albu, president of Romanian Women's Lobby and founder of the Community Safety and Mediation Center in Iași, a very important service provider. Laura also served as vice president of European Women's Lobby, one of Europe's most important networks of feminist organizations. We hope to be joined also by a guest from Croatia. We have invited writer and sociologist Bruno Simleza, who has been very actively writing about the importance of 50-50, the very topic of our festival. Just to give you some background information about this edition of the Gender Equality Festival, ALEG is organizing this festival as part of the project Gloria, Feminism and a Strategic Approach to Gender Equality, promoted by the Community Safety and Mediation Center in partnership with Association Romanian Women's Lobby, Bulgarian platform of European Women's Lobby, Hungarian Women's Lobby, the network of East-West Women, and the project is financed under the Active Citizens Fund Romania, funded by Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway under the EA grants 2014-2021. We will go into the topic at hand, and one of the things I've been thinking about during the last few weeks was how important it is for families and couples to share responsibilities, especially in times of crisis, times of pandemics as we are crossing. I've seen it in my own family when we were sick and we had to take care of each other, take turns taking care of our child. It was really a blessing to be able to rely on each other and to have the day-to-day possibility to share tasks and to not have everything lying on the shoulders of one person. And this is why we at ALEG think that the solution of 50-50 is something of a real urgency that we all should be embracing and promoting for the well-being of our families, the well-being of our relationships, and our communities in the end. It's easier to be healthy when things are shared fairly. In Eastern Europe, we are still facing a lot of stereotypes. And while women taking very high positions in society and contributing fully to public offices is regarded as a very positive sign of progress. The involvement of men, however, in household tasks is still regarded with some contempt, seen as a sign of weakness. And I wonder why this double standard. Do you see in your country such differences in the way women and men relate to gender equality? And I would like to first hear from Hungary. This is a neighbor country that has been facing quite similar circumstances with Romania. But I wonder what are the differences when it comes to gender equality? Borbala Juhas, what can you tell us about this difference?
Thank you very much, Camelia. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to present at the Gender Equality Festival. And I'm congratulating you that it's already the 16th edition. This is actually one of the things I'm going to say, that patience and the long time engagement is very important in tackling gender equality. I think Hungary, Romania, Croatia, and Moldova as well, we have been sharing some common heritage vis-a-vis gender equality because of our state socialist past, which at least in theory had an idea of equality between women and men. And also on the road for joining the EU, Moldova is still on this way, but these countries have been encouraged to take over a new version of equality between women and men, and we had to comply certain rules. Some of them were similar to ideas that we had earlier. What difference we can see in these countries and other countries like Poland or Czech Republic or Slovakia is how after the change of regimes, or the revolution, as you call it, after 1989, these countries kept or did not keep the child care provisions, for example, or the maternal or parental leaves. For example, Hungary, and we are very proud of that. We managed to keep this very, very long parental leave or maternal leave, and except for the creches that were owned that belonged to the factories or the agricultural cooperatives, they were also kept. I think that is a difference, for example, with Poland. So we have this kind of background. But politics always has a relationship towards gender equality, fortunately or unfortunately, because many of the things that are said about gender equality is guided by politics. And there is a kind of division in Hungary. It's historically, we have always had this division between, for example, we can say conservatives who put an emphasis on family values and traditional values for women and men. And they might see a danger in gender equality, especially if the word gender is used. Whereas the other part of Hungary, they see it very important and the sign of good governance and democratic institutions, and very often the points of reference are either the EU or the Council of Europe or the United Nations. So some kind of outside forces, although of course they are not outside because we are also members of it. Now, talking about COVID, that was a very, very interesting situation, and I think in all countries. Hungary was unique in the way, I think, that women or parents were not helped at all in this situation. When we had homeschooling, working parents, and of course most of the parents are working, they had to take their holidays off. They didn't get any help by the government, either financial or other, which meant that by the summer of last year, 2020, all their holidays have been used. Especially heavy burden was put on parents who worked as doctors or nurses or care workers, because they can also be parents, and nobody really took it into account. So despite the fact that the Hungarian government now portrays itself as a family-friendly country, where family friendliness is a key issue, looking at it from a worker's point of view, these parents were not helped at all. And I also sometimes do research on different topics about gender equality and everything with gender. And it was very interesting to see that even these research done on the topic was divided. So, for example, some research said that COVID was actually very good for equality and relationships within the family, because parents, fathers were more involved and the families got closer and it was very nice. And another type of research that, oh no, COVID was terrible because violence against women rocketed and they could not easily get to shelters because of the lockdown. So it made things much worse. And we have very little data on how many women lost their jobs, especially women who worked in services or as waitresses, or in tourism area, or like cleaning ladies or others. We have no knowledge of that practically.
Yeah, that's very interesting what you were mentioning as the very different outcomes of research. I think it only shows realities that are actually coexisting. We do have a lot of inequalities that have been accentuated by the pandemic. We also have parts of society and families in which indeed the 50-50 solution was boosted by the pandemic, and they probably had a much easier time adapting. I wanted to say hi to Bruno. Very nice to see you at our Gender Equality Festival, even if we only see you on the screen. Bruno is a sociologist and a very esteemed writer from Croatia. And you write about healthy relationships. You write about this topic, and you also inspire many people. So I wanted to ask you, Bruno, what is your perspective to the way women and men relate to gender equality? And what is the situation in Croatia now, a year and a half into the pandemic?
Well, first of all, sorry for being late. I was sure that we are in the same time zone.
Well, yes.
6 p.m. in Romania is the same as 6 p.m. in Croatia, so sorry for that.
No problem. We are.
But let's see right now if we are in the same.
We're in the same
zone.
room.
No, in the same zone regarding equality, because, well, for instance, right now you said I'm a writer. I'm doing my book tour because I have a new book, and I'm a writer for, I don't know, 20 years, and I never heard a question: who takes care of your kids when you are out of town? Never. I'm very much involved father. I want to be involved, and we live by, we don't just talk about, we live by 50-50 in all aspects of parenting. And still, I never heard that question on 500, 600 or 700 book promotions I did in the last 12 years in which I became a parent. And my
Whereas
wife,
if you were a female writer, I'm sure this question would have come up.
It comes up for my female colleagues all the time, on every single or every second book tour, and it's just normal to ask them that question, and it's not normal to ask me, and I don't think that's fair. So in that regard, I think little has changed in Croatia and surrounding countries. And in pandemic, especially when the kids were doing the online schools and everything, still majority of housework and taking care of the kids fell upon women or mothers. So it's expected for them to be the parent number one, sort of say, when it comes to helping with homework and arranging something with, I don't know, birthdays of the kids. And we are sort of glad if father helps with parenting. So that's the goal. It's not the goal for a father to parent, actually, but it's goal and very much appreciated when a father is helping to parent his own child. So I think we are still, I don't know, 50 years behind Scandinavian countries in that respect, or 30 years behind them, where I don't know, that there was one research in Croatia from 2019 that women, employed women, still do 86% of everything regarding housework and parenting, 86%. So sadly, that has changed somewhat in the last year and a half, but I don't think that it has changed enough, and we are far off 50-50 in that regard, and we have still a lot of things to work at.
Yes, I think that's the situation in very many of the countries in Eastern Europe. And recently, I was looking at a study published by the EU, the glass ceiling, and monitoring the progress around European countries on gender equality. And it was making a very interesting connection between an index of female advantage, in which means more than the absence of inequality. So looking at the countries where women enjoy equal opportunities and have the possibility to advance, and the economic prosperity of the countries. And there is a clear connection here. The countries that are where women are advancing are also the countries that are doing well in terms of product per capita. And of course, Romania is one of the countries at the bottom of this graphic still. And I wanted to ask Nigina from Moldova to tell us what the situation looks like over there, because we know Moldova has been facing also economically more difficult situation. How is this affecting the lives of women and the situation of gender equality?
Good evening, colleagues, and thank you for inviting myself for these discussions. And on behalf of UN Women, I would like to congratulate you with this great initiative and this interesting platform where we can discuss about gender equality issues, how we can promote gender equality better, and what are the best solutions for that. Frankly speaking, I have very mixed feelings because, of course, we are passing through a very challenging period in the region, but also globally when we speak about COVID-19, because it affects disproportionately women and girls. And I will speak later about that, but in fact, I want to start with very positive news from Moldova. First of all, is that Moldova ratified the Istanbul Convention on October 14, This is a very historic moment for the citizens of the country, and in particular for women who are victims of violence against women and girls. As well, we have the first ever the president of the country, which is a woman, and through that example, we break the rigid glass ceiling that women cannot be leaders or cannot take decision roles.
Absolutely.
Well, after
you really deserve congratulations for that.
Thank you so much. As well, after the parliamentary elections, we have 40 women MPs in the parliament, and by this we just reconfirm how important it is to advocate and to have temporary measures as quotas for in politics for women. And now I will speak more about sexes, because of course it's fought to promote women in decision-making processes, but on the same time in the law it's related to sexes. So it will be nice if this will be 60-40 or at least 50-50, because today is this is the topic of this festival. So we also have approved the feminization of the professions, which I think is also another very important path towards the promotion of gender equality, and showing that women are not only active in the traditional fields and can have also another role in the society. And of course, all these aspects shall be implemented. Of course, it's a long way farther for that important achieved milestones. But on the same time, we still face discrimination as women in Moldova. Even we have a very good national legislation, we still have to work on the negative perceptions about the role of women in the society. We also have very negative experience and examples on how women were discriminated during the election processes. And we also have examples when different groups attacked women in and this violence in election phenomena. I think it's also very it's raising in our society, because people see in the decision-making processes only men, or so by now. Now, of course, it's different, but in the same time, we need to work and to show a case that women in leadership positions also can do great things. And we also have a woman who is the chief of the government. So we have a woman prime minister as well. And in that case, indeed, it's very important not only to have these models, but also to work with families, with stereotypes, in order to change the realities. Regarding the COVID-19, as I mentioned, it affects disproportionately women, and as Borbala mentioned, we face the same challenges in Moldova. Unfortunately, the violence against women and girls increased in this period. They had limited access to services, and this is not only because of the fact that there were lack of services, but in the same time, it was a new process for everyone, and it was the new pandemic for everyone. And in that context, we learned all together how to act. We learned all together how to provide support. And in that context, we also tried to identify alternative solutions, how to support women, those who were separate of the services and who have very limited access to that services. So women also face the burden of the households, and women lost their jobs. Women were challenged by discrimination as well, because they were put in a situation to choose between their families and to choose between the job, because also the educational process went to online. So all these challenges affected women in Moldova. On the same time, together with the government and civil society organizations, including with the Gender Equality Platform and National Coalition Live Without Violence, we tried to boost our support in order to offer essential services for women, but on the same time to inform them about the ways how they can overcome the crisis. So this being said, I think my feelings are mixed, of course, because on the one hand, I see a lot of positive progress taken into consideration the legislative part, the ratification of Istanbul Convention, and other very important paths that were taken by this government for the citizens of the Republic of Moldova. On the other hand, I see a lot of things that shall be done further, because, of course, very important thing is to promote gender equality in a way that it is embraced by everyone, not only by groups, separate groups, but by everyone. And this 50-50, as you, Camelia, mentioned, to be like in our
the new
DNA,
normality.
in our DNA, and to be a normality, yes.
Yes, we all share this hope. I would turn now to also to Moldova, but the Romanian part of Moldova, as we have with us Laura Albu, who has been working for very many years, and we have been colleagues in the national coalitions for a long time. And I always have this, on the one hand, just like you, Nigina, were saying, there is the joy of seeing some things changing, and at the same time the sadness of having to talk about the same issues over and over again. How is it for you, Laura, and how do you see the progress in Romania these days?
Well, first of all, I'm so happy to have this kind of neighbors around us, which neighboring countries, which have so amazing successes. Because actually being in Iași and just looking over the Prut River and seeing Moldova ratifying Istanbul Convention, having a women president, having this almost parity in the parliament, and this is happening in a very short time, but it's filling my heart with hope as well. And also it shows that the change doesn't need to take 100 years, because as you know, when we calculate what are the chances to reach gender equality in our countries and in Europe and in internationally in general, it looks like will take forever. So I don't want to repeat the challenges all the countries are facing during COVID, and also challenges regarding gender equality. I'm just, and I think this will be the next phase of our discussions today regarding solutions and how can we reach a fast change, and not necessarily a change in general, but a positive change. And I think here we just start with the title. So European Women's Lobby and our coordination, national coordinations, are supporting 50-50 for a long time. And having 50-50 is not necessarily a goal in general but we have to look how can we make structural change in the society, and that it's having progressive feminist leadership and also progressive political parties. And unfortunately, looking around in all the countries, we see that it's not happening because we have the same structure in the way political parties are built, and the rules and the way women are visible or invisible in our societies. And I think that's the issue also regarding the way society changes, because looking around, we see that women around us are invisible. And why are they invisible? Because we don't talk about them, we don't promote them, we don't see them in the public eyes. And whatever we see in the public eyes is not good. And so the invisibility of the frontline women during COVID is clear. The invisibility of the sacrifices women, and you all of you have talked about the fact that many of women have to lose their jobs during COVID or change and take precarious jobs in order to have a flexible time, to have a part-time job. And I didn't see many men giving up a full-time job to stay home with the children, or even if they were full-time jobs remotely, they were working remotely full-time and were not sharing the time with the
Domestic
woman in the
chores.
house. Yeah. So actually, the second, the 50-50 is one pillar. The second one, to have a feminist economy, because the feminist economy, which European Women's Lobby is and our coordinations are promoting this concept, is putting a caring economy at the middle, at the core of our actions. So this means that we change the lens through which we look to the society in terms of GDP, for example, like taking into consideration unpaid work, invisible care work, and also all this work the women are doing and taking precarious jobs. And this, I think, will be a first step of changing our society in terms of not looking to the care as an expense, but looking to the care as an investment. And so investing in care, that will be, but probably we'll have time to talk about that later, talking about solutions and changing political life. So changing political parties, or if we cannot change actual political parties, building new political parties, or if we can't build new political parties, at least infiltrate political parties with feminists. And if you can't infiltrate political parties with feminists, maybe, make a new society in which we have more feminists, which anyway are supporting this society. And we will see, maybe we'll have more Moldova cases. And I mean it like in a very positive way. We literally, a couple of weeks ago, a group of feminists in our country gathered together, and we were planning in coming in the march towards Chisinau. So that's our next stop, coming from Romania to Chisinau to learn how did you do it, and to see if it's possible to do it in Romania as well. So that would be for the beginning.
I totally echo your words, Laura. I also feel that we have a lot of things to learn from Moldova, and they have proved it over and over again. So keep an eye on Moldova, because there are good practices coming out of this very small but resilient country. I think that changing the political parties, changing the system, boils down to changing people and the way they think. So my next question to all of you is, how do we make feminism more user-friendly? How do we help more people in Eastern Europe grasp this concept in the right way and get rid of the fear that is there? Because we all have seen a lot of fear growing in our societies towards concepts like gender equality and feminism. It is very easily to misinform people and to create a whole hysteria around the idea of a Western import that will destroy the local traditions and will bring in some unnatural rules that will leave our children without real mothers and fathers. And the way this threat is presented by some of the conservative voices is quite threatened, quite passionate, and can influence a lot of people. So what do we do to counteract this? And can you give some examples from your day-to-day work? Barbara, I turn to you for some examples from Hungary.
Thank you. So reflecting what my colleagues have said earlier, Bruno mentioned Scandinavia. I think it's very important to remind ourselves that feminism was so successful, or these women and family-friendly policies, including shared parental leave, for example, and the involvement of Swedish fathers more in child care, was the result of several decades of very strong feminist movement within Scandinavia, and combined with a social democratic care economy. So I think one of the problems where kind of negative tendencies towards feminism is connected to in the cases of East Central European states is that when it arrived, well, it was always there. First of all, we have always had our feminists in Croatia, in Hungary, in Romania. So it was not a Western import, but it was seen by many as such after 1989 and 1990. And it was combined with a neoliberal economic approach, which only saw women as kind of workforce in a way very similarly to the communist ideas. And that was already a kind of negative attitudes. And what Camelia mentioned, nowadays it has reached a kind of civil war in the heads, a kind of ideological war. I think it's very unfortunate. And while I've been thinking of the possible answers, I think what we need is more practical policy solutions, more reference to local research, which should always be sex segregated. I give you a case, a Hungarian case, for example. Just recently, a new bill was proposed in the Hungarian parliament, which would make shared custody easier for divorced parents. And even on the request of just one of the parents, it would be possible for the court to order shared custody. And also shared placement, 2 weeks with the mother, 2 weeks with the father. And we were not very happy with it because it did not take into consideration violence and domestic violence or violence against children, whereas it was portrayed as a positive example of involving more fathers into the lives of the children, but it was disregarding the violence in family. And we were looking for data to talk to the journalists on how many women get the custody of children and how many men. And imagine there is no data like that in Hungary because the courts do not sex segregate the data. So they don't know, they're just parents. So I think it's very important to have sex segregated data, policy solutions, practical solutions, And I love theory. I'm a historian, I'm a gender expert, but a little bit less theory. And I also think that in the case of Moldova, there was a strong political will to achieve this change. And that's why it could happen so fast. I could also give the example of Hungary, where not gender equality, but family mainstreaming was a political decision 11 years ago. And they used the methods of gender mainstreaming to promote family mainstreaming. And I think that's what should be done for equality of women and men. So the Hungarian government started research institutes that work with families, for example. They put family mainstreaming at the core of policy making. They spent a lot of money on advertisements, big billboards and interviews. They introduced policies, although they have been criticized by gender experts that they only focus on middle or upper middle class white families, but nevertheless, a lot of family policies were introduced. They also put faces that are connected to this. For example, I minister for family affairs, Katalin Novák, she's a woman. There was also money allocated to it. Often our previous left-wing liberal governments, they were very happy to talk about equality, but they did not give money in the budget to equality. Also, our conservative government made up a very good story that resonates with people. And I think it's very important. I know I sound like a marketing expert. I am not. But a good story, it's very important, that resonates with the everyday problem of people. And also they were cooperating with key NGOs, conservative family-focused NGOs, large families, associations, etc. This has always also been the case. That was not always like that, for example, for Hungarian NGOs that work with violence against women, because our NGOs that work with violence against women, they were always, as we Hungarians say, the kind of, you know, the little thing under your nail. Nobody likes it because there are violent people, politicians in every party, to be honest. So I think we can, you know, follow these good examples, and we should remember Scandinavia's example, a strong women movement, and also, yes, spending, a kind of social democratic spending on the social net, because I think without a meaningful social net for women and men and families, just talking about equality, it's not enough.
I agree with all the solutions you mentioned there, and I particularly want to stop on this idea of stories, and how do we make a good story about gender equality. And as we have a writer with us, I would like to ask you, Bruno, how is the sound of a good story on 50-50, and how do you build these stories?
Well, I will also sadly agree that it's important. I'm not a marketing expert, but it is important to have a good narrative, especially in 2021, where people do not have the attention that we used to have. So you have to capture somebody in the first glance, and it has to bring out emotion, positive emotions. So perhaps when, I don't know, conservative groups glorify family as something holy, they bring out positive emotions. We must protect our family. It's under siege from Western influences, George Soros or somebody, I don't know, from Satan. I do not agree with that, but it's extremely successful narrative.
It's easy to connect to, especially if you don't have a lot of information about the topic.
Of course, but you don't, in today's world, you don't have to have a lot of information. You just have to react. Your emotions need to react. We can see the same thing with vaccine. We will not go in that direction. We can see that in every single social issue. When you when some social narrative, so some political narrative makes you react, emotionally react, you tend to be more involved, and it's not academic academic approach or academic talk about it. We should change our minds by saying that feminism is just, it's common sense. It's not something
From a book?
No, it's not something from a book. It's not something out of our reach. It's just common sense, and it means that we respect each other. It means that our families, our relationship can thrive, and our societies can thrive. Because, for instance, I don't know who mentioned that the societies thrive economically when we are equal. I think you, Camelia.
The European Commission.
Yeah, of course. But that doesn't mean anything in a term when you have to engage people. But if you say that you will have more time, you will have more money to realize your dreams, you will have more free time to do whatever you want, that means something. You will have more opportunities to realize your both business and private goals. That means something, because you want to have more time to realize your goals. That is something that most people will respond to. So sadly, the conservative narrative is much more attuned for individual of the 21st century, because it has 3 or 5 main topics, main sentences, main, no more, because they can only remember 3 or 5 main things, and they repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. And progressive leftist narratives are just too broad, too mental, too conceptual. And it has been that, like, I don't know, in the 20th century as well. But in the 20th century, we had more attention. We were not attacked by all the notifications for our smartphones, and we had more time to reflect and self-reflect. So in today's world, we have to make up storylines and narratives and campaigns that will catch our hearts, not just our minds, and that we cannot use that by facts. Facts do not mean anything in social discussions. Facts mean something for scientists and for rational people. But in social discussions, in huge social discussions, they don't mean anything. For instance, when we had this discussion, both in Hungary and Romania, but the idea of gender, and we in science use the term gender for 50 years, and there has never been a problem. So we distinguish gender and sex, and it has never been a problem. But for the last 10 years, it's been used as some kind of bad language in which we want to erase the difference between men and women, but it was simply explained. It was inaccurate, it was not reasonable, but from the standpoint of the conservative ideology, it was simply explained to their followers, and they responded. So yeah, a simple, easy to understand, easy to repeat narrative that will target your emotions, that is something, not numbers, but emotions. Emotions are key.
Thank you for this very good recommendations. Nigina, how are you working with people's feelings? You are a UN agency, and still you manage to have projects that really raise a lot of emotional response, a good response from people.
I think that it's important to have a very comprehensive approach towards promoting gender equality and eliminating violence against women, because I fully agree with the Barbara and Bruno that we have to demystify what is feminism about. This is the first thing, because it's about equality, it's about win-win situation, it's about equal opportunities, it's about inclusive policies, and it's about societies where everyone lives in respect and with a huge potential to do things whatever and how they want, both men and women. On the same time, of course, there are a lot of struggle and challenges around these words and how these concepts and approaches are used by other groups of the society, because every society has different groups which are pro or are contra something. At UN Women, we have a very holistic approach towards this, and I just would like to mention that we have 3 directions. It's related to promote the participation of women in decision making and Women and Peace and Security agenda. We also are supporting economic empowerment of women through different streams and, of course, eliminating violence against women and girls, because we truly believe that societies shall promote zero tolerance towards violence. Our approach is holistic, and I will speak more on the solutions that we are somehow promoting here in Moldova, taking into account the innovation. And here I would like to mention some innovative solutions that we are applying towards ending violence against women. And first of all, it's related to involvement of youth and supporting youth to co-create their solutions on gender equality. And one thing is related to the development of the virtual reality tool, which embodies a scenario between sexual harassment and flirt. And this scenario was developed by youth with civil society organizations who are specialized in that direction. And through this, we want somehow to combine innovation, technical innovation with social innovation, and to raise awareness about the negative impact of violence, and of course to create respectful relationships between among young people, but also between parents, teachers, and society at large. So this is one thing. Secondly, we are trying to promote gender equality through art. And here we have a very nice partnership with a local NGO who is promoting graffiti, hip hop, and art. So what we did, we created a friendly environment for young people from all around the country to discuss the issues about gender equality, ending violence solutions, and based on that as well, to develop some images, and after that to put these images and to transfer it to the walls, and this is like graffiti images. So by now we had the opportunity to speak with around 500 young people, and of course to develop very nice images on how they see equality. So also we are working, as Camelia mentioned, with women survivors of violence. We also trying to create support groups at local level here in Moldova, because we truly believe that leading by example can change things. And when I mentioned this leading by example approach, it's not related only to what we are doing in our work every day. It's also related to how we behave in the society, how we discuss with our families, and how we promote gender equality. Because if we hear a sexist joke, if we hear something which is not appropriate, we need to report, we need to intervene, we need to start discussions around these topics, because when we speak about gender equality, we need to live with this gender equality not only in theory, as Barbara mentioned, but also creating enabling environments for women and men to discuss frankly about this. Also, we trying to involve and to engage more men and boys in these discussions, Of course, it's challenging, but at the same time, we think this is a unique opportunity to see and to also understand what men are thinking about gender equality and how they can be allies in that respect. So this is another stream that we also are working on, but of course, it's a multi-layer intervention. We are working with government, we are working with civil society organizations, but also trying to develop more inclusive policies in that respect. So this is in a nutshell on some innovative solutions that we can, and the idea of storytelling, I think it's very nice, because through storytelling we can at least create the environment when people start thinking that something maybe is wrong or something shall be changed in our life, in our neighbor, in our environment, everything in that respect. Yes, thank you.
Yes, that's very, very true. It's important to get people thinking and change maybe the perspective they have been used to. And I wanted to ask Laura, how do you manage to do this in Romanian Women's Lobby and in your work in the Community Mediation Center?
Actually, we are very happy that in a way, COVID year was 2021 was a bad year and a good year in the same time. It was bad because obviously of COVID and the challenges regarding this, and a very good year for Romanian Women's Lobby in our organization, because we have for the first time a project tackling strategically gender equality. And that means that we have like 22 member organizations and in Romanian Women's Lobby, and we trying to build actually capacity inside these organizations, because we are organization working with domestic violence, organization working with women in politics, organization with working with vulnerable groups, with Roma women, rural women. And so when we talk about inclusiveness, we need to have professional women everywhere. So actually, when we talk about resources, this is a first project which focused putting resources towards women organizations, because we talk about policies and who will build new policies, who will come with policies to change the society. Obviously, we will need money, we will need budgets, and that will mean that we'll focus on gender budgeting. And obviously, we will need dreams and minds building this future for our families. Because, of course, it's a very nice picture, which Bruno told us about having more time. Everybody wants to have more time. But when you need to sacrifice, one of us in the couple need to sacrifice his or her time, that it's not good. And what is missing, why should be challenging? Because there is no care support. Of course, you want to see a movie either with your partner or alone. You want to go and participate in a training for women in politics, but who will take care of your child? Of course, so you will need all this care infrastructure. And going back to the Western societies in which all this care is provided, there is this infrastructure in the Scandinavian countries, and our partners, which is Hedda Foundation from Norway, give us a lot of information about how they build this. But they put a lot of money onto building a feminist economy and having all this infrastructure, allowing us to be equal. Because when you need to challenge for every little step in which you need to be free, but usually it's you who need to, the woman needs to sacrifice her time because there are no options and society don't put any money on that. And the second layer is political parties, which I'm building stories for our boys and men. Well, where are our boys and men in the parliament, in the political parties are only men. Rarely we have women which with a real power to put some money there. So to have a legislation in place and then to have a ministry in place with a budget for that particular issue. So having a good story is very good, but you need to have people back there building policies. So we hope at the end of these 2 years of a quite interesting project, building capacity in having women campaigning for 50-50, having capacity on gender budgeting, having capacity building for women to organization to have alternative sources of funding, and have been more visible stories. We'll have a movie, Women of Change, and which will try to promote good stories about women, and hopefully stories which will be able to be understood by everybody. And here our partner from Norway will be a big help because they have a lot of movies, feminist movies out there in production. So hopefully Romania will be able to build one as well.
Thank you very much, Laura. As we are coming to the end of our discussion, I want to invite you for a final round to capture, maybe in no more than 1 minute, what would be your essential message about nurturing gender equality in Eastern Europe. Barbara.
Thank you. There is a Canadian psychiatrist, Gábor Máté, of Hungarian origin, and he works with trauma. And trauma...
We all read him these days.
Oh, glad to hear that. He works with drug addicts in Canada and Vancouver and elsewhere, and all of his patients are trauma survivors. And I would like to emphasize that trauma also has a cost. And violence against women, it has a cost on society. And human trafficking also has a cost. I once heard a very good calculation of Ukrainian costs of human trafficking. So if we look at it from this kind of economic perspective, a more equal society where people are happier and people in a good relationship are happier, healthier, and live longer, that's a scientific fact, then maybe we can influence our politicians to trust those policymakers Laura mentioned, because we are here, there are good policymakers and good people working on the ground with minority women and poor women and women in the countryside to trust us.
Right, so
together
gender equality is healthy. We hear this message from Hungary. Yes. Let's hear a message from Croatia, Bruno.
Gender equality is the only way to go for both men and women. Because it's not a women question, it's a human question.
That's
both
right.
Men and women are happier when we are equal. Boys in a man's body are not happier. Cavemen are not happier. But men, real men, are happier when women are equal to us. It's just common sense. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's just common sense. And I think the change should be comprehensive. So we need to change the laws. We need to have the political movement. We need to have movement on social media as well with nice, cute hashtags and everything. We need to have influencers involved. So it has to be comprehensive. We have to have positive role models that represent that equality means happiness. It's not a phrase, it's not a sentence. It should be embodied in the real people. So people have to see it in, I don't know, Bruno and Gina and Laura, in concrete people. So
yes,
we have a long way to go, but we are going in a good way. But I would like for us to be going just a little bit faster.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. Let's hear from Moldova, a final message, very short.
Yes, I would like to highlight once again that women's rights are human rights. And I think that everyone can make a difference. Doesn't matter the sex of the person and the gender of the person. And of course, what I truly believe in is that women and girls shall be part of this process and shall be part, shall create the enabling processes and enabling environments, and to feel support, to feel encouraged that they can do everything whichever they want. And also, I truly believe that involvement of youth also can make a very big difference, because in socialist societies, we every time mention that youth are the future. I think that youth are the present, and they can change things now and here. And these also shall be communicated. They can change things, and they can contribute to the empowerment of women and boys in the societies.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. Laura, an ending thought from you as well?
Yeah, so in my view, gender equality, society, how it looks like, well, first it has a feminist economic model, and have, what does that mean? To have a care economy, to have an inclusive society, and also to build a feminist future where no one is left behind. So if everything is in place, that means we are in a gender equal society.
Thank you all for all your thoughtful contributions. Yes, gender equality is profoundly human, and it's about us becoming happier and having more resources, more opportunities, and more shared advances for the future. I'm looking forward to talking to you again. And for our viewers, please stay tuned on our communication channels, as soon after this live, we will be discussing about the visibility of women in the city. Who does the city belong to? Looking forward to our next discussion. Take care and stay healthy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a great night.